And just for reinforcement on the agenda, we've brought in senior politics reporter Samgela Masego in studio to give us some reaction on this. Sam, I know that you have a conversation that is lined up for us.
Indeed, Mkolisi, we do have a conversation lined up for you that takes out of the backdrop of that conversation with the ANC's national chairperson, Gwede Samson Mandashe. But we are going to be more extensive on international matters, particularly on the invasion of Venezuela by the United States President Donald Trump, with the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Mapaila, whom the communists have lamented the kidnapping of Nicholas Moduro and his wife by the United States of America. The South African Communist Party has condemned the invasion of Venezuela by the United States administration of President Donald Trump, that has ultimately said that they will be taking over the running of Venezuela until a handover of power to the new administration. The SACP has over the past year been critical of the lack of respect of sovereign states by President Donald Trump. For more on this particular discussion, we will speak to the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Solim Africa, Mapaila. General Secretary of the party, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Compliments of the new year. Hope you're rested.
Yeah, good morning, Isabel, and good morning to our viewers. Compliments of the new season to you and to the viewers and the people of South Africa. Yes, one had a little bit of rest after hectic work, particularly the last period of our work. We did a week-long program in the Northern Cape in Hanspan, in what we call People's Red Caravan. It was quite exciting. Unfortunately, it coincided with the ANC NGC, so I had to miss that one for the People's Program.
Well, Mr. Mapaila, if, for instance, you look at the new year now, the first of the new year began with the invasion of Venezuela by President Donald Trump and the United States Army Special Delta Forces. What is the SACP's posture, particularly looking at the invasion of Venezuela, knowing that America has invaded Iraq, worked away without oil, invaded Libya, invaded Panama with George Bush in 1989? It's got a history of not respecting sovereign states and invading those particular states and living a destruction of chaos within those particular countries. And running, Mr. Mapaila, to pick it up where we left off, Venezuela, President Donald Trump, lack of respect of sovereign states.
Yeah, firstly, we want to extremely condemn this United States action against the Venezuelan government, the violation of international law and national sovereignty of Venezuela, the abduction of an elected president, constitutionally elected, who won elections fairly and square. And we, at the delegation of election observers, including of the entire alliance, who seen what was happening in those elections. But because the United States of America had already had someone in mind over the years, they rejected the electoral outcomes. Venezuela runs one of the best electoral systems in the country, and in fact, almost every year they've got multiple sets of elections, and they are even electronic. Just at the end of electoral process, within an hour, we have an idea of who has won actually. So this violation of international law and disrespect for international law by the United States is completely unacceptable. We understand that the United States it's running after Venezuelan oil. Venezuela has about 306 billion cubic liters of oil, and the nearest rival to that is Saudi Arabia with about 203 billion cubic liters of oil. Because of that, and the attitude of Donald Trump, who said he's pro-oil, he decided that he's just going to bully Venezuela, take over the oil. And not only just oil, but many other resources, including lithium and gold resources, which are quite in abundance in Venezuela. But what is also critical is the fact that the United States, since the 1950s, had signed a deal with the then Venezuelan government when they invested money to build the oil industry. In that deal, the United States decided to invest and build the oil industry in Venezuela only for abstraction, and then build the entire refineries, up to 28 refineries in the United States, and up to 4,200 filling stations in the United States. They still exist even today as we speak. So, and out of that particular contract, they gave Venezuela $1 out of every $100. When Hugo Chavez came into power, he then felt that this completely must be reversed because it was completely non-beneficial to Venezuela. And in any case, over the years, that infrastructure built in the United States was built of Venezuelan oil. So even this lie that they are going after their resources is completely untrue. So it is just the expansionist tendencies of the United States, the extension of the Monroe Doctrine that you can see over the last 60, even 100 years or so. They've invaded no less than 11 Latin American countries, the United States, removed democratically elected governments on the basis of the government that do not share the perspectives of the United States. Like in Venezuela, Venezuela is building one of the most exciting concepts of people's power based on the ground. In fact, believing that by removing President Maduro, they will destroy the Venezuelan revolution, they are completely incorrect. They want to achieve that objective because that revolution is organic.
But what is the next step of stopping this particular lack of sovereign states by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump? We've seen him signing peace accords between the DRC in the Great Lakes region with Rwanda and the disruptions that are there within those particular countries. That peace deal broke down after a week after it was signed. You've seen them trying to negotiate between Russia and Ukraine. You've got the UN Security Council sitting on Monday, tomorrow. Russia and Ukraine have that issue, so Russia may not be objectively speaking within the United Nations Security Council. You've got China with Taiwan as well. What will ultimately be the resolution of this UN Security Council, and doesn't even have teeth to stop President Donald Trump of his lack of respect of sovereign states?
Sabala, let's start with the so-called peace deal in the DRC. There's no peace deal. The United States has gone to the DRC on the basis of the weak leadership of President Tshisekedi of the DRC, abstracted from the DRC, minerals worth $3 trillion US. That's more than the entire GDP of the African continent combined. So that's the basis of their intervention there.
So, Mr. Mapaila, you are essentially saying the United States is intervening in all of these countries in order to extract the minerals.
For its interest, yes, of course. This one in the DRC, it was public knowledge. They didn't even hide it. So there's no peacemaking that they are bringing in on the African continent. They are after the resources, particularly in the DRC. As you know, the DRC is the richest African country with mineral deposits, particularly cobalt, gold, and everything else. There, even oil. I mean, the oil lake coming from Sudan passes through the DRC as well. So the deal that he was making was just about money. But what he's not going to get at his own interest is the situation in Ukraine. At the moment, he can get the Europeans to buy arms through the Americans, which of course he has made a lot of money out of that, instead of the United States just giving the money to Ukraine to fight Russia. So he has got a way to do it now through Europeans buying the resources from the US to fight Russia. But they won't defeat Russia. I think that's the reality. Russia is a big power, has capacity to confront the United States. As we speak, it is confronting the entire Western Hemisphere on its own. All of the West combined against Russia, they failed to destroy it. I mean, Ukraine is just the proxy of Western imperialism that wanted to obliterate Russia completely. And they failed in this regard. I mean, even the recent attacks on President Putin's house, which we condemned as the Communist Party, completely unacceptable. It's a Western concocted process using Zelensky as a stooge of Western imperialism. But nonetheless, he has to negotiate differently on the Russian side. In other cases, like in Latin America, in this case in Venezuela, he knows there's no military power to respond to him, and then he can do as he pleases.
But how does the UN Security Council respond to this particular matter, noting that some countries have their own issues to deal with in the invasion of other sovereign states' territories, with Taiwan wanting to be independent from China, Russia, Ukraine? How do these nations, who are big superpowers within the United Nations Security Council, respond to President Donald Trump tomorrow?
Well, you know, the problem with the United Nations Security Council is that the system of permanent members of the Security Council and how they function, the 5 permanent members, is that all of them have got veto rights. And the US has used this veto rights than all of the others combined. So in other words, it doesn't matter what they say. If the US doesn't agree, it simply says we don't agree, and its decisions will be implemented. So the UN Security Council, or the UN certainly, has become a toothless institution, but is a relevant institution that is required. We need transformation of it so it can represent the totality of the world, for instance. The African region, for instance, the Eastern region, whether it's India, Middle East, and so forth, they are not Latin America, they are not represented in the UN Security Council. And these are majority of the people in the world. So until we achieve transformation of the United Nations and its Security Council component and its ability to stop wars. I mean, you have seen the United Nations could not do anything with the genocide in Palestine happening on a daily basis. And the worst is that its own platforms will still be open to a country like Zionist Israel to go and take the platform, continue to condemn the Palestinians and continue to condemn the rest of the world, the same as the Americans are doing. So it will just be a declaration which will be supported by few countries, but it won't stop the US from doing what it is doing. But it is necessary for the world to speak out against these actions of the US.
So the declaration will hold no water?
In a way, because practically it won't stop the United States from doing what it wants to do. And I think that's the major weakness of this process. But that it sits and can debate this question, it's important because it can express the authority of the world, even though that authority may be disrespected by the United States. Because the United States, by disrespecting this, is taking itself out of the sphere of international law, which should respect particularly Article 1 and 2 of the United Nations Charter, which talk to sovereignty of state, independence of state, and respect of international law on the basis of agreements made by the UN. So in this case, it's okay, and we appreciate even South African government for making this instant call, so that the United States can know that what it is doing is not approved by the rest of the world. Even European countries, by the way, as you know, were shocked by this kind of action. It's unacceptable. It should never happen anywhere else in the world. Just because they've got military power, they think they can bully anyone, go and abduct a democratically elected sitting president. Completely unacceptable.
When you look at President Nicholas Moduro, some have criticized him as a dictator within his country. He's exiled a number of political opponents within the political system in Venezuela. Have you engaged with other political formations in Venezuela on what is happening on the ground, and what would be the SACP stance going forward, noting this illegal invasion of Venezuela by the United States of America?
We have interfaced with many social and political forces in Venezuela, especially the trade unions, for instance, the Communist Party of Venezuela, PSUV, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, which is the party that is led by President Nicholas Moduro. Those are political forces. That party was established by President Chavez. We support them. We have been working with them consistently as the Communist Party. But what is important about Venezuela is that President Chavez started a process of organic socialism, building people's power on the ground. And it is that people's power that is now matured. And in its maturity, it can defend the Venezuelan revolution. I mean, if you have participated in the political discourse in Venezuela, you'll see how exciting that revolution is. And this is the main threat to the United States, because they realize that, they will also realize soon that after they've abducted President Maduro, they will not have destroyed the Venezuelan revolution. Of course, it's a setback to the extent that they've done what they've done, but certainly they will not destroy that revolution. That revolution is quite strong, and it will gain more strength. And I think President Maduro was one of the most inspirational leaders. Of course, in the context of the tensions that have arisen, we have written articles even about this thing ourselves as a Communist Party. I remember one time I went to observe local government elections in which Maduro's party lost. They accepted the elections. And because there are presidential elections, there's the National Assembly elections, there's mayoral elections, and so on and so forth. There are a multitude of elections in Venezuela. They have accepted losses in instances. So at one point when we were there, we found that the oligarchs in Venezuela were working with the United States by hoarding resources in the retail sector. For instance, we wrote an article called the Toilet Paper Revolution. When we were in Venezuela that week, the retailers were told, they were housed to hold back the toilet papers. So there was no toilet paper in the country. But toilet paper is there. They pay the oligarchs, the owners of the capitalists. They pay them money and say, don't distribute the resources to the people. So the people were reactive and angry. So it is that kind of a thing that the United States, and evidence has been there. And some of these people that you are saying are exiled politicians. They're not much exiled politicians. They are those who are colluding with the United States to destroy the Venezuelan revolution.
If you speak about these oligarchs, is it the very same oligarchs that is alleged that they are within the oil industry that have concocted up a deal with President Donald Trump away from the opposition parties, which President Donald Trump has not endorsed within the country of Venezuela, and said that the United States will be running Venezuela until a transition of power in the next year?
That's also unacceptable. Who gives the United States the power to run affairs of another country when the country has got its own constitution and processes? So some of these oligarchs, of course, they have worked with the United States. I mean, certainly, in the context of a variety of sanctions that the U.S. has imposed on Venezuela, for instance, over the years. At one point, Venezuela was the most sanctioned country in the world. It's now overtaken by the Russian Federation. It surpassed North Korea, it surpassed Iran. And during that time, the U.S. indemnified American companies to go and produce oil in America, like Chevron, for instance. That's why at one point we made a public call in South Africa to say, because Venezuela had said to South Africa, we have given you a plot of an oil field to come and exploit in honor of President Mandela, in which we could have lessened production cost in South Africa and have cheaper oil. In Venezuela, that's the thing that they're chasing after. Oil is cheaper than water. That is petrol. It's cheaper than water in Venezuela. So that's what the U.S. is after, because oil is so important. And now Donald Trump didn't even hide it in his press conference yesterday. He said now they will even be able to sell oil to the Russians and everyone else in the world, precisely because they know they've got a big kit now that they have stolen. They are literally stealing in front of the world from the Venezuelan people. And this must be condemned in the strongest terms possible.
Going forward, Mr. Mapaila, you were part of the campaign to free the Cuban Five. Will you be running a campaign to free President Nicholas Moduro from the clutches of the United States of America? He is set to appear in a court in New York in the next week or so, particularly on charges of being involved in narcotics.
Yeah, that's it's a lie. I mean, we all know it's concocted charges against the Venezuelan president and his wife, Celia. We express our solidarity with them. They must know we'll always be with them. Nicolas Maduro had represented the Venezuelan people very well. He has represented Latin American countries very well as one of the most steadfast leaders. He was actually taken up the gadgets of many Latin American revolutionaries like Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, Somoza, and many other important Latin American leaders. We will certainly be running campaigns for his release and to stop these concocted charges against him. I mean, the manner in which they are seeking to embarrass him and to denigrate him, to denigrate Venezuela, to denigrate the Latin American people, they will never achieve that. Those are upright people. And it is in the context of even when they were in the middle of sanctions, how they continue to live, that Venezuelans had admired his leadership during that time. So we in the Communist Party and the other communist and workers' parties across the world will be fully behind him and will continue to support him. We'll be launching a lot of protests against the United States to express our views so that they know we do not support what they've done.
Moving on to domestic issues. Government of National Unity, your assessment over the past year of the Government of National Unity, knowing that you were very critical of the GNU. I never saw you at the ANC's midterm review, the National General Council. I saw your First Deputy General Secretary, Madala Masugu, who seemed to be having a very difficult time addressing those delegates.
No, Comrade Madala didn't have a difficult time. He was booed, which should be condemned. And the ANC should have properly condemned that. He was not protected properly, which is not what we do when we have got allies invited to such kind of a platform. I was in the Northern Cape. We were at our People's Red Caravan in Ganspan. You can go and see what we have done there. We have set up more than 4 farms for the community to produce food, as well as chicken bun and so forth, which is already working quite well so far. And I think it's important to also see many other things that we have done in that particular community. We have put up sports fields for the community. We have put up a community park in which young people participated in the construction of their own park. So I was happy working with the people on the ground than to go to meetings of talk shops that are of no consequence. And I'm not saying that it is not important constitutionally to have that NGC. It is.
So you're saying the NGC was just a talk shop?
That's what I'm saying. Constitutionally, it's important to hold it. But what impact it will have on the policy direction of the African National Congress in the context of now dilution of our policies through the Government of National Unity. And we
but
can
the National
see
General Council is not a policy conference.
No. The National General is a midterm Congress.
It's a midterm review
Yes, it can also,
of the decisions of the National Executive Committee
yes, it can
that cannot change policy.
It can also review, on the basis of its review, it can determine what kind of action you need to take. And therefore, from that General Council, the policy conference will receive a proper report about what were the difficulties over the last period and what needs to be changed. So it's an important platform in the affairs of the African National Congress. But what I'm saying is that if the policy conference, in the context of the GNU, is meant to justify this sellout program of the people of our country, in which the living conditions of the working class and the poor is not materially improving, and we want to satisfy ourselves as leaders that we are on the right course, then I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in practical programs that will change people's lives, like what we've done in Ganspan. It was worthwhile to be in Ganspan that week than to have been in any other meeting of no consequence.
So you're essentially saying that the National General Council was a waste of time, noting that it would not change the status quo of the Government of National Unity because it endorsed the formation of the GNU.
You have answered yourself, Sabi.
No, I'm seeking the answer from you, Mr.
No. You have already answered yourself. All I'm saying is, I was in a people's program that practically changed people's life within a week.
The NGC took a resolution that the SACP deployees within the ANC's election machinery must recuse themselves until this particular modality of you contesting is resolved. What is the SACP's response to that particular declaration of the NGC?
No, that decision is of no consequence to us. We actually took that decision almost a year earlier.
But SACP representatives were at the PGC of Mpumalanga election workshop where Nomvula Mokonyane, the first deputy general secretary of the ANC, chucked them out.
At that time, we had already taken the decision that we are not going to participate. As the SACP, we took that decision. The ANC then invited them. They consulted us to say, we have been invited. We said, but you know, we've taken the decision. They said, but if you are invited, alert them about that. And if they insist, you are free to go and participate, because there's nothing wrong in any case in that context. So they went to participate. The reason we took that decision was that when we reached a point just before our Special National Congress, where we discussed what we call flexible option, a collaborative system in which we wanted to work with the ANC about how to rescue our revolution. The ANC said no, they are not interested in that. They just want us not to participate in the elections. So this is completely unacceptable. They can't tell us what to do. We are an organization independent on our own. We share a common program there and there. Of course, the gist of the program that we're sharing is deviating. That is why, for instance, I saw the comment made by a chairperson of the ANC, Gwada Mantashe, that we are going it alone. He has lost track of the SACP's own policies, even though he can claim to be a member. We need members who are conscious, who also follow our own policies. We are not going it alone. We are going with the people. We remain with the people. But it's the ANC that is deviating from the course of the people. That's what we are trying to rescue. If he has been following theoretical debates inside the Communist Party, you'll not be making such kind of uninformed statements.
Which people are you taking along, Mr. Mapaila? Because in Sishiho, in Julius Malema's ward, which the EFF won, the SACP got 70 votes, which does not even constitute a branch which I would understand a branch would need 100 members in ANC terms and other political formations to constitute a branch.
Do you know the branch of the SACP?
What is the branch of the SACP?
It's 25. We didn't even have a branch in that area, by the way.
But you got 70 votes. And
yes,
elections
that's
are a numbers game.
No, these were elections in a ward. In any case, it was important symbolically for us to go to that particular ward, Ward 13 in Seshego. Very important. I've had discussions with Julius about it as well, Comrade Malema, about us going to his ward. We're laughing about it because, of course, it's a different kettle of fish altogether in the context of what system. And it was not going to change the position in council. But it was important that the SACP affirms itself that it has now entered local government elections on its own with the people, with other parties. So we're still busy discussing with various formations about how we're going to contest these elections in different platforms and so forth. But the bottom line is that we've entered the participatory process in the electoral process, and we're open to engagement with various organizations in front forms. That is, we are building organizations. In some instances, it will not necessarily be an SACP candidate, but it could be a candidate representing the entire class in a particular community. In some instances, it will be directly SACP candidate and so forth, which is what the ANC, by the way, rejected when we're putting the proposition on the line. Because, by the way, it's very, very important when you do this analysis, Sabelo, to note that the ANC is losing a lot of PR votes in the system, what we call wasted vote. I can give you an example. Here in Johannesburg, with 306,000 PR votes in the city of Johannesburg, the ANC is given 4 PR seats. The Freedom Front, with 12,000 votes, also have got 4 seats.
Action SA, through the PR system, has 44 councils.
44, yes. So it is all of these things, but because the leaders are addicted to political power and control, they don't even want to debate.
So you are saying that your modality could see you supporting independent candidates that may not be affiliated to any political formation within this coming election?
If that independent candidate is appointed by the community with the participation of the Communist Party in that particular community. So it's a front process, but it's also independent process of the SACP. So we will have SACP on the ballot, would have in particular wards where, for instance, the SACP will not be on the ballot, but other parties will be on the ballot, or a community member will be on the ballot on the basis, even if that particular member may not be necessarily coming from the SACP. That's why we call it a people's process to rescue their own revolution.
Let's take your ward, for an example, in the East Rand, in Ekurhuleni. Would you have a SACP candidate, or would you have a candidate that is supported by the community, noting that you come from an area that has a large political history that has contributed to the South African liberation struggle?
Well, our ward will have to decide, like every other ward, they will have to decide about the modalities in that particular ward, the structures, the community members, and various organizations that exist in that particular ward, how they work together. On the basis of that working together, then they will decide who becomes the appropriate candidate. And it may as well be that the SACP leader or member becomes the candidate.
Moving on to the issues of the alliance, you and the SACP in the main, your national chairperson, Blade Sigamareza Mpepe Nzimande, has written a document accusing the SACP of moving away from democracy or authoritarian rule at the hands of your leadership. Doesn't name you, but you can see the allusions that they are alluding towards you. Your Deputy General Secretary, David Masondo, has also written a paper disagreeing with the SACP contesting and going it alone within these particular elections. Puti Manamela has also written a similar article. Is the SACP divided on this particular issue? KZN is disbanded. Themba Mthembu did not agree with this particular decision.
Well, Sabelo, this is you have mentioned many things. Firstly is that we have defended all of those comrades to write, to express their opinions. And I led that defense personally, from Buti to Masondo, even to Nzimande. But I differ with all their comments. So they know that. The bottom line is that, let's take the last one by Nzimande, our national chair. Our augmented central committee called him to order. They rejected his paper completely. Also because, and we have also discussed this with him, because it also had inconsistencies with our own discussions.
What are those inconsistencies?
For instance, it created an impression the same way as the ANC document on the basis that this decision was a special National Congress decision. This was a Congress decision. So it just as from the beginning. And the theoretical framework was also incorrect. And by the way, he himself had led this particular process to say, if we can't do it, we postponed as the leadership, the collective leadership, the participation in the elections, including the 2024 elections, because people like him argued that let's rather start with the local government elections. Now, when they turn around, they don't go to the membership and say we've got changed views. They can't deal with the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is that the South African revolution has deviated from its course under the alliance, precisely because the alliance lacked capacity to transform itself to be able to direct this revolution properly. That is why there's no discussions about the nature of alliance today and the direction that our revolution should take. In other words, the transformation agenda of our people. So on that basis, if you take the neoliberal economic trajectory, which is the central transformation element in our revolution, is not shared by all components of the alliance, including in many instances, the African National Congress. That's why in public, we've also challenged the African National Congress about their adoption of a neoliberal framework of the economy from the last conference of the ANC, which was not adopted in the plenary of Congress. It came out in the resolutions, and we challenged them like that. In our case, for instance, when people wanted to contest whether we've taken a decision to contest elections within 6 months after the 2022 National Congress, because that's what this decision was saying, we were able to play the recording of Congress to prove that this is what Congress said. For that matter, I was not even in the plenary of Congress. That's when we were addressing our first press conference, when Congress took that decision. It's not even personal. The decision is taken in my absence in the plenary of Congress. It's Comrade Tulas, we left in the meeting to chair the meeting. That's so when this decision was taken. In fact, if you read my statement when I was in the first press conference after we elected, I was actually reflecting on what the commission reported to the Congress. Congress differed with that commission's report by simply saying, we can't allow this thing to continue in the same way as the olden time. We need to put a deadline. That's when they put a deadline of 6 months, which was about up to this augmented Central Committee of the SACP. So we've taken that decision as Congress. So Nzimande in this case was also wrong to state that it's a special National Congress decision. So he has been taken by the new wave, but it was deliberate to forget his own organizational decision in order to justify this reaction inside the ANC. We will have to deal with this reaction inside the ANC, including the threat on our own members. But the ANC must know when they are threatening our members, they are also threatening their own members.
Are you saying that there is a rift between yourselves on a trajectory perspective of the party, between yourself and your predecessor, Umpepe Nzimande?
No,
is there a rift?
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the national chair of the SACP himself must be consistent with the ideas of the Communist Party.
Is he being opportunistic?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he must be consistent with our own ideas, our own decisions. And his paper was off the mark. In any case, our augmented Central Committee, when they confronted him with this thing, he had the humility to apologize to the Central Committee.
Why was that not made public?
No,
because the paper was public.
No, it was not our intention. Our intention was not to embarrass him. Our intention was to correct him. And the Central Committee corrected him, and he listened. That's why he was able to stand in front of them and apologize.
What will you do should the likes of Blade and Nzimande, who are cabinet ministers, Butima Namela, a cabinet minister, Popira Matuba, a premier in Limpopo, you go to Xolile Nqatha in the Eastern Cape, should they not campaign for the SACP?
Well, we expect all our members to campaign for the SACP. That's the bottom line. Of course, understanding this dual role inside the ANC, we also expect some of them to take decisions to stand with the ANC. And we won't punish them for that. We have said it publicly. We have said it to our structures. So we don't understand what is this brouhaha about, because people are just running after control. That period is finished. We want to redirect the National Democratic Revolution to respond to the needs of the people, to fight against neoliberalism, and to improve the working living conditions of the majority. At the moment, at this current trajectory, it's not going to be possible. So we need a radical shift, and this opportunity brings that element. That is why, even when we realize ourselves as a Communist Party that the alliance is unable to activate and rejuvenate itself and rejuvenate the National Democratic Revolution, we went out to convene as a conference of the left. We have already set up the steering committee of the conference of the left. We'll be holding that conference in the next couple of months, so that we clarify our agenda of transformation, not only beyond ourselves, but to the rest of society and progressive forces in the country.
We've got about 5 minutes left. The Congress of African Trade Unions, COSATU and FAO, they want to join COSATU back. What is the SACP stance?
COSATU and FAO.
SAFT, you are confusing me now. NUMSA and FAO want to rejoin COSATU. What is the SAP's role in making sure that the left of the alliance is once again brought to be stronger, noting that COSATU is a shadow of its former self? You at the Dobsonville Stadium, it was an embarrassment. There were no people within that particular stadium. NUMSA wants to come back, FAO wants to come back, but there is that issue of Zwelinze Mavavi and SAFTU. What is your role there?
Look, I think the lessons today is that we will support any unity of the trade union movement as a whole, not its further divisions. Any other thing that may divide the working class, particularly the trade union movement, the SACP will not support that. The SACP has always called for unity of the trade union, and the fact that the federations themselves may ultimately have to come together and massify their unity. But to the extent that this is used for nefarious reasons, because we don't like this and that particular individual, we will not be able to support that. That is why individually, even NUMSA, for instance, has been invited. In fact, it has accepted invitation to participate in the conference of the left. We are also going to be having a bilateral discussion with NUMSA, not necessarily to say they must come back to COSATU. If they take that decision, it's their own decision. We won't oppose that. But to say we want them to play a particular role in the transformation of South Africa within the framework of the working class and the section that they are organized as a union.
Is Cyril Ramaphosa a sellout?
The president of the ANC is the custodian of its economic policy. The trajectory that this country has taken economically is not serving the interests of the country, and that we are unhappy about as the Communist Party.
Is President Ramaphosa a sellout?
Sabelo, I've given you a full answer. Why do you want answers from the street?
Not an answer from the street. I take it because you consistently said the GNU position is a sellout arrangement. And when decisions are made, decisions are not made by ointments. Decisions are made by warm bodies who've got views, who speak. And ultimately, the face of an organization is where the buck stops. That is the premise of the question.
You see, Sabel, leaders don't work like that.
I've got a new name today, Sabel.
Samken. Leaders don't work like that. My apologies about that, Samken.
Okay.
My serious apologies about that. Leaders don't work like that. We must still find time to talk to each other. So when we critique the GNU and its economic policies, we are not personal to the leader, but we are also aware about the role of leaders, and in this case, the role of President Ramaphosa, whose ANC constitution gives him the legitimacy to lead the economic policy of the ANC. And we are saying that economic policy is not changing the lives of the people, and therefore needs radical change. So that's where the major things are. And we still want the role of government, particularly what we call public sector economy, to be strengthened, industrialization to take shape in the country. And you don't see that. What we see is government handing over the little it has under control to private capital. And those people are unaccountable to the people, and they do as they please for their own private interest. So it is that makes huge differences within the framework of the alliance. But we continue to have open talks and engagement with all leaders of the movement.
You go to the last point I want to bring. The NGC resolved on beneficiation and leveraging on South Africa's raw minerals. And yet you say the NGC was just a talk shop that will ultimately not see these resolutions being implemented? How do you foresee them being implemented, knowing that currently we are exporting raw dust to the international markets?
That was a decision taken at the NGC in Port Elizabeth, that decision. It has just not been implemented.
Thank you very much, Mr. Soli Mapaila, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party. NGC was a talk shop. He better used his time in the Northern Cape working with people, giving those people particular land of tenure, helping them work the land, which is a resolution and part of the Freedom Charter, that the people shall own the work, that they shall own the land that they work, and also ultimately speaking about the economic trajectory of the country, speaking about the authoritarian nature of President Donald Trump not respecting sovereign states, and that the SACP is with President Nicholas Moduro and his family, and that the United Nations Security Council will ultimately make a declaration, but it will ultimately just gather dust, as it will not be implemented because of the veto resolution of the United Nations Security Council, that if one nation vetoes a decision, it can't be implemented. And that Bladen Perpetua, Sigamareza Nzimande, was mistaken and misled when it came to that particular decision of him disagreeing with the SACP going it alone, saying that he's kicking the can down the road consistently on this particular issue and not being truthful to the South African Communist Party.